original.
Rhythm and rhyme, show to enhance, show experience.
Episode 5 something. It's gonna be because Stewie always sends him like 3 episodes in advance, and when I'm like, no, it's not like that. It's something. It's 5 something, and we're approaching 540.
Have you really shot 500 episodes?
Yes, I have. And it's all. It's really. I took them all down.
Really?
Yeah. I took them all down. You guys were not worthy. Fuck it. Today we got a special guest with us. We got Rob Freeman. Rob Freeman, if you guys don't know, if you guys don't do your Googles, is the director of Drop the Needle.
Yep.
And
dope hip hop documentary.
It actually encompasses everything we need to, everything you want to know about Canadian hip hop. If you want to sit there and be like, hey, what's Canadian hip hop in the last quarter century? Pop us in real quick.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you for creating a special, or reliving the special time in our history. And you know, it's refreshing to see people recounting their childhood emotions, and talking about how they, the moment they bought those vinyls, like you can see the happiness in their faces.
Yeah, the nostalgia, the memories.
Well, the nostalgia is the word. Like I didn't realize. I guess I should have, but I didn't realize just the amount that people were going to latch onto the nostalgia aspect of the story of what we were doing. Maybe it's something I should have been aware of earlier on, but it's just seeing people talking about the nostalgia and reliving it and this, that, and the other, and it's, nostalgia is a powerful thing, right?
Absolutely.
And so to be able to kind of tap into it in this way has been really interesting to see kind of the response people are having specifically for that nostalgic piece.
Yeah.
When did you have the eureka moment? Like, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to drop this. This is what's happening.
Well, it was about 3 years ago, July. I had done some stuff beforehand, and I had an opportunity to kind of try this kind of something for real, basically, something at this level. Mm-hmm. A good friend of mine who I grew up with, a guy named Neil Acharya, he's a journalist. I was thinking about doing something sports related. I said to him, hey, listen, we got an opportunity to make a documentary. Like, what could we do? What's an idea? He was going to do a written article on Play to Record, right. But then he said, let's do Play to Record. I wasn't familiar with the store. I didn't grow up in Toronto. I wasn't a DJ. I didn't collect records, but I knew it was an institution. I don't know why, but I knew it was an institution, but I wasn't familiar with it.
It's a sign walking on
Yonge Street. It's the sign, but though specifically, I grew up in Kingston, Ontario. Kingston, Ontario, when it came to hip hop, there was only 2 sources. One Queen's University radio station from 12 to 3 nighttime on a Wednesday, which was always tough to listen to when you're going to school.
Yeah.
Or Rap City, Much Music. So Much Rap City, Extendamix. On Extendamix, they used to have sponsored DC's Picks. Dave Campbell is the DJ for Master T. DC's Picks, and it would be sponsored by someone, and it was usually sponsored by Play to Record. Mm-hmm. So for me as a kid growing up, the only sources for hip hop was either this one radio show or Much Music, and seeing the Play to Record name on there, I guess for me, I kind of always associated then that Play to Record must be an important thing because it's always just on this one, the only source for me getting the music, right? Mm-hmm. So right there, I knew it was important, but I did not know the story. I didn't know why it was, specifically why it was important. So when he suggested let's do Play to Record, it took me a night to kind of think about it, but then I kind of realized that even though I don't know exactly why, I know it's an institution, and this is a good idea to pursue. And fortunately, it has definitely been a good idea to pursue.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And me and my co-host, we've been talking about creating a documentary, and I came up with an idea for a documentary. And I'd just like to know how you made the documentary happen, because the idea that I have is a documentary about my co-host, and I want to call it Big Man, Small Clothes, and it's going to be about how this guy is able to get in such tight-fitted clothes. So I want to know, how do you make a documentary happen?
That's going to be a tough one. That's like a short, I think.
I
feel like this is like in the same category as Bang the Party. Don't you agree?
What's that?
Bang the Party.
Is that on Pornhub?
No, it's
because I think I watched that this morning.
No, ridiculousness. Like, it's called ridiculousness On Ridiculousness. You ever
Oh,
see
Bang the
Ridiculousness?
Party?
Yeah.
Okay, no.
I never heard that one.
For real?
No, I haven't heard that one.
But I think it's on Pornhub too.
But I feel
Oh
like I feel like you're batting for me against this guy.
But you know what? That was really interesting you said that. See, when I was talking about the steps to get to this point in time, 2008, me and Neil, like we did try something in 2008. At that point in time, I didn't have the experience needed to make it good, but I thought I did.
Documentary.
A documentary. It was on flyering and postering. So the street promotions, right? People go out there handing out flyers and the posters back in the day when I think they still do it, but before the internet, that's how you had to get a show out. We called it Bang the Party.
Really?
So, yeah, that was the name of it because that was one of the shows that we were talking about in the movie was called the event was called Bang the Party.
So you really
and we
thought
called
that
it
I
Bang
just
the
made that
Party.
up?
So when you said
Hold
that, I
on,
was like,
hold on,
you knew
wait.
that?
So you really thought that I made that
I
up?
don't know. I thought it was I really thought it was something on Pornhub.
not why you
No,
knew that.
shit.
That was-
I caught you guys off guard with that one, didn't I?
Oh, she actually knew you.
didn't know that.
In 2008, I read about it.
Really? Very
You said
good.
it was one of your it was terrible. You called it
Oh,
terrible.
yeah, it was
She
terrible.
she
It
she,
was
she
terrible.
did her
Yeah.
Googles.
Really? What was terrible about it? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to. The thing alone caught my eye when it says "Bang the Party." I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was terrible because I thought I could do everything in terms of
Okay,
sound,
got
in
it,
terms
yeah.
of camera,
Oh, okay.
in terms of like, it was, we had material for a 30-minute movie and I wanted to make it 90 minutes. So I'm trying to stretch it out. I wasn't used to the editing at that point in time. But at that stage, I was a little bit overconfident in my abilities to do things. I needed that humbling experience. So when I say it was terrible, but it was also really important to get to this point in time because I had to learn.
It's a learning. Yes,
Experience.
absolutely.
You
Yes.
you learn what you think you're good at, what you could develop on, what you need other people to do. So I knew I needed a DOP, a director of photography, who knew how to set shots up
Got it.
much better than I could, and do lighting better than I could, and do the sound better than I could. So it was terrible, but it was also one of the better things that I've experiences to get here because of that aspect.
Yeah. So it's necessary.
It was necessary.
Yeah. So how does one? Back to my original question.
Yeah.
How does one get a documentary started? Like, do you come up with a script? What?
No, it's good. I mean, you have to have that idea, and you have to have that idea that you think is going to have an audience for it. I think in this day and age, because there's so many movies and so much television out there, that you have to think of an idea that will have an audience for it. So that was one problem that we had with one of the obstacles with Drop the Needle was because it was a Toronto-based store. We're facing people outside Toronto saying, "Well, that's just who's going to care about that outside of Toronto, right? Like it's just specifically a Toronto thing." Now, I didn't agree with that. I thought that even though it's a Toronto story, like I watched movies and documentaries about New York.
True.
I watched it about Los Angeles. So
That's
why
true.
are we worried about this? Because it's a Toronto-based store. But that was the perception. That was the kind of obstacle that we had to deal with. So when you're making a movie, the first thing you got to do is say, A, what's the idea? And B, is that idea going to have an audience? Because if it doesn't have an audience, you're not going to be able to get a distributor. And if you can't get a distributor, you're not going to get into theaters. You're not going to. I didn't go to Amazon Prime. Someone else went to Amazon Prime for me.
Got
right?
it.
So you have, and they're not going to do that unless they think that you have a
Product.
a product, that's going to appeal to, Amazon Prime wants viewers. So it all kind of, it starts with the idea, but also starts with an idea that you think you could either has a built-in audience or that you can grow an audience as you.
It's a great idea, but I would think that would be a hard pitch too, because I feel like Play the Record is such a niche landmark, and like you said, who's gonna care about that? But I wasn't really familiar with it. I mean, I watch Munch Music and I always see Play the Record at the end
For real?
of, I believe, the show. What do you
For
have?
real?
To?
Downtown?
No, like I know of it, but I didn't know the history and how much it impacted the culture and how valuable it was. Until honestly, I watched your documentary, so we need more documentaries like that. Yeah. And I salute you for creating such a monumental project because I loved it. I loved it, and the music takes me back. I love the music.
Play the Record was one of those stores that brought people together, like from all different type of cultures. Like you would go in there and the vibe, the energy from the music to everything, like they had vinyls, they had CDs, like they had everything in there. And it was like when it was closing down, it was like, oh my God, really? Because I felt like it brought people together, like no matter where you were from, like uptown, downtown, doesn't matter. Like everyone came to, and because it's Yonge Street too, it was in an area that a lot of people walked up and down and stuff.
That's actually the best thing is because when I started it, I didn't know that either. I didn't know that community aspect. I thought it was just a brick and mortar store. Like, where's the heart? Where's the soul? When I started this movie with Neil was ahead of the curve. Like, Neil was a little bit ahead of the curve of me in terms of the knowledge of everything. But for me, I thought, where's the heart? What's the soul? Where are we going to get into? And my idea was that, well, it's just a store. We're not going to be able to find it there. So we'll track the evolution of Canadian hip hop, and hopefully I could and then see how it sort of mixes in with the store. But I could find the heart, I could find the soul, and the evolution of Canadian hip hop. But then as we started interviewing people, and specifically when we interviewed Eugene, because when we interviewed Eugene, which was day 9, we already heard a lot of stuff, but at the end of his interview, and it's in the movie, at the end of the movie, he started talking about how he was by himself. Like, he's works by himself. There's not as many customers coming in. He doesn't know if he's going to be able to stay in business for as much longer.
The technology part, yeah.
Yeah, but then I saw him, he was expressing that sense of loss. And when so what was he losing? And it was the community aspect, as you're mentioning.
Yes.
That's when it kind of clued into me that was the story. That's the heart, is how this community of artists, DJs, MCs, producers, promoters, record collectors would come to treated this as a hub where they would all come together and talk and hang out and sometimes fight for records. Treated as a hub. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't that hub anymore. There was a loss of that. And that whole, when he started saying that stuff, that's kind of when I clued in, okay, that's the story. Yeah. The story isn't about anything else. The heart is the fact of this rise and quasi fall of this, this hub for this community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And when it came to selecting the guests that you would have on the show, what was that process like? Like, is it something that you and your partner kind of collaborated on, or was,
Yeah, it was me and him. Now, first, because again, initially it was a little bit more like, okay, it's going to be hip hop heavy, even more hip hop heavy than it is. So we definitely got a lot of hip hop orientated, targets, for lack of better words. It was Neil, thank goodness for Neil, who kind of realized, because again, it is hip hop heavy documentary, but the store wasn't just a hip hop store. House, techno, drum and bass, jazz, all the stuff, reggae was so important to the store. Now for me, in terms of like the storytelling aspect, I thought a little bit of like, from a stylistic standpoint, I did want to have a little bit more heavy on the hip hop side of things, but we had to really stress that it wasn't just a hip hop store. And that's what the cool thing was, though, is that because it wasn't a hip hop store, just a hip hop store, you would have people coming in for hip hop, you would have people coming in for house, drum and bass, and then when they come in, and this was the thing that Jason Palma, who's a former co-owner of the store, really made a point of saying, is that you come in for one thing, but then you would hear something else
and leave with that,
and all of a sudden now you're getting fusion. So now you're now producers are able to mix a little bit of this, a little bit of that. They're hearing new sounds, they're hearing new stuff, but they didn't come into the store for it. So that was the beautiful thing about it, was just this mixture of not just artists and MCs, blah blah blah, but just the type of music that everyone was kind of listening and coming together. So it was an interesting, certainly a great thing.
If you were,
girl, stop pretending like you were there. You just watched a documentary last night.
Don't play yourself.
Like, yeah, you see.
Listen,
I know my shit.
Yes, I do, because I've been in there buying a 1-2 CD.
You went to the Yonge Street
before it closed.
And I went there too, but like I didn't know, like you said, the sense of community, the history, like it was just a record store to me.
Whenever you walked in there, you could tell he was like the chief of the place. Like,
it was like everybody knew him. It was like a family in there. And when you walked in there, it's like, if you went there often enough, they knew who you were. And it was like, you were lucky to see some, Toronto artists walk in that store. Sometimes you'll go in there, you'll see somebody, you're like, God damn it. Like, can I get a pic? Like, you understand what I mean? So to me, that brought people together. And the fact that it had to close down and then nothing opened up after that is
it's
crazy.
Unfortunate, but
it is, because we need something like, I feel like we do need something like that back.
Although one thing I'll say about that though is that it was something that's said in the movie too. Home is where Eugene is. Them losing that Yonge Street location, without a doubt, is very sad, right? But now the Spadina location, I mean, Eugene's still there. You still get artists there. You still get MCs there. So you still can get, it's not the same thing, and it never will be the same thing because of technology. But Eugene's still there. The records are still there. The vibe, like, there's still people there. So it's like there's loss, but it is still going today.
I am amazed he's still able to sustain it, because it is a business, and I assume profitability just isn't there.
Well, that's why at the end of the movie, he's saying to us during the interview, like, he doesn't know if he's going to be able to survive much longer, right?
Yeah.
He says that in the movie. I'm happy to say that since the documentary's come out, he's been extremely busy. I hope that continues. I hope people kind of make an effort to get down there. Maybe it won't be 100, 200 people fighting over records on a Thursday. Maybe it won't be that. Yeah. But it could still be people going there and kind of talking and, you know, hanging out and talking to Eugene. And it could still be, right now it's something. It could continue to be something. It's just a matter of people kind of getting out there and treating it as a hub and making that effort to make that happen.
You know what? We need to start that trend.
So how long did the filming take from beginning to end?
The actual filming, or not the editing, right? Just the filming? The
filming and editing. Well, the whole process, even the treatment.
Okay, so I'll go through it then. So in July of 2020 is when I talked to Neil. August 2020 is when we did the prep work, like, okay, who we're going to interview, like just getting a cameraman, getting sound, so all that kind of stuff. September, October, a little bit of November, we filmed 15 days during that span of time. Okay. Started editing it right away. I edited it for about 4 or 5 months, realized that we needed someone to tell the story properly that we didn't have, so we did one more pickup day. We actually got Cardinal on that day, so we didn't actually have Cardinal we kind of got Cardinal at the last minute in a way. Did that one pickup day, and then I edited it for the rest of 2021 and the first half of 2022. Essentially, like, it was a lot of editing. So
about 2 years.
Yeah. But then you get your distributor. Did a theatrical run that took a couple months. Did the art house theaters across Canada, and then there was a little bit of a time period where for Amazon, I knew about Amazon back in November, but we couldn't say anything about it until May, which was like the longest, hardest, because everyone's saying, when can we see it at home? When can we see it at home? I'm like, it's just one of those things, right? Wow. So there was like that little time period where we were just kind of sitting, waiting for this big step of Amazon Prime to happen. So, the overall is almost 3 years, but 2 years probably was the actual, most of the production happening.
Are you happy with the response to the documentary?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And is that opening up new opportunities, new doors for more documentaries for you to create? And
well, ask me in a month, because it's always, every time you start something new, there's obviously going to be a little bit of challenge. Number one, getting financing for it. I was fortunate to get financing for the first one through family connections, but I'm not going to have that opportunity for the second one. So the second one is going to happen based on the success of Drop the Needle, right? So I feel optimistic. We have an idea. We're pursuing the idea. We're hoping to be starting in September, basically. But at this point in time, is it done? No, it's like in terms of financing. No, it's not. So it's, money is a challenge. Unless you have a massive catalog of movies and proof, there's always going to be a little bit of like, trying to convince people.
How do you make money on a documentary? Like, how does that work? Are you even allowed to divulge that?
Oh, I can. I can, because I did for me, it was about, building an audience. You can't just throw a movie out. This day and age with so many movies and so much television, if you put a movie out there with no hype and no effort, it maybe will succeed. Maybe, but like, there's so much out there, right? So for me, right off the bat, here's what happened. When we were trying to interview people, no one knew who we were. So I knew that we had to kind of try to use a little bit of sales techniques to get people on board to be interviewed. So what we did was I went down to Eugene. Eugene agreed to do the to be participate in the movie. So I said, Eugene, take a picture of the slate. And on the slate, we're going to put Drop the Needle on it, right? Take a picture of the slate. Post it on your, if you don't mind, post it on your Instagram page, the Play to Record Instagram page, so that anyone sees it that we want to interview, will at least now be taking it a little bit more seriously. First interview we did was Mastermind. Mastermind, do you mind taking a picture of the slate, posting it? Because we know that Mastermind's super, well known.
Adds credibility.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. He sees it, he posted it, people see it, helps us out. So we continued to do that over and over again, but I was doing it to get people to be interviewed for the movie. What I didn't realize at the time was that what we were also doing was we were also building an audience, because everyone who's not someone we're targeting is seeing it saying, oh my God, there's a Play to Record movie. Oh my God, you got Mastermind, you got Mel Boogie.
Anticipation,
you got all these people in it, and all of a sudden now there's this snowball effect's happening, right? And so what I was focused on then for the 2 years was just building on it and adding to it and sharing selected, like, archive material. I got a lot of pictures. I'm not going to use all the pictures. Let's post this one picture just to kind of get some response, comments, other people see it. It's about building the awareness of the project, right? And then at the end, you build the awareness, and then you hope that the people who see it initially like it. They say that they like it out loud, which then will get more people to watch it. So it's just so important, I think, in this day and age to identify who your potential audience is and learning and how to spend the time to build it and grow it so that when the movie comes out, you have that already there. One last thing, and then I'll stop talking about this. But when Hot Docs Cinema, which is 650 seats, right? When we premiered in Hot Docs, there was this question of, could we keep the expectations reasonable in terms of how many people are going to be there? Because it was just after COVID. Hot Docs wasn't selling tons because of that. So keep your expectations low. But because of the groundwork we had done, not only did we sell out the 650 on the premiere, but they wanted a second screening a week later, and we sold that one out as well.
Amazing.
So we had 2 sellouts.
Make some noise for that. Amazing.
So that's why the importance of filmmakers have to also look at the marketing as well. I think in this day and age, at least for documentaries. I don't know how it works for fiction. That's obviously a different story, but for documentaries, you gotta kind of look at that.
So, do you have a background in film? Like, did you go to school for film or
no?
Really?
Yeah, no. I was just all self-taught.
It'd be like that.
Wow, that's amazing.
But part of the problem though was I was overconfident, right? Because I didn't go to school and learn different things I needed to learn. When I was just overconfident. I was only caring about playing basketball. Like, I didn't care about going to school. And then when I got into the film side of things, I was so overconfident that because I watch movies, I can make movies. That's not how it works, right? So what would have happened if I did go to school earlier? Would I have been able to make something like this earlier than now?
That's true,
it would have been nice. But at the same point in time, I'm still happy to be here now. So it's like, whatever. It's not the end of
absolutely.
It's not the end of the world, right? But
how do you think the play the record is gonna affect the younger generation? For those who don't know,
they don't care.
I'm just saying, because you were talking about when it comes to your core audience, right? So when you guys
drop the needle.
No, I was saying your core audience when you were speaking about his core audience. When it came to Drop the Needle, when you guys were thinking about obviously the people that would be watching it, who did you guys more cater it to? The more older audience or our generation?
You're right. The audience, the audience that knew the store or grew up in 90s hip hop. Not just hip hop. I mean, there's a lot of guys, like I said, a lot of people who were in the house and drum and bass and stuff like that. They also like hip hop. It was all back in the 80s. It was called open format. When you went to a club and listened to a DJ, the DJ would play a hip hop song, 2 hip hop songs, a house song, a reggae song. They would play everything, right? So at that time period, you would have a lot of people that maybe the hip hop wasn't their first love, but they still liked it enough that they would enjoy the movie, right? So our audience was, but you're right, in terms of the demographic or the generation, it was that older generation, right? But my only question though is this: is that I grew up when I was in my teens or a little bit older. I watched movies and documentaries that were set before my time, and I found it interesting. Sometimes I didn't, sometimes I did, right? But I liked a lot of stuff that was a little bit beforehand. So when it comes to the younger generation, I'm sure there's going to be some people that, won't care. That's fine, right? But I feel like there's people that do enjoy movies, enjoy hearing stories, and kind of learning a little bit more about the history. And my hope is that we attract enough of them to kind of, hopefully.
The only reason I say that, and I agree with you, is like when it comes to like places like New York and LA, those are like iconic locations, especially when it comes to hip hop. Toronto, we're still the baby cousin. I think it's just we are.
No, we're the third biggest city in North America. But go ahead.
You think I'm talking about in terms of hip hop, right? Being recognized for hip hop. Toronto's still not there. It's nowhere close to being on the level of a New York or LA or the Bay Area. So that's why I'm kind of like skeptical on people, even the younger generation, especially, like even giving a fuck about it. To be honest with you, I think they should. Don't get me wrong.
But I'll throw a counter to that though. There is already so much material about New York and about LA out there. Like, how many documentaries about New York hip hop, like hip hop evolutions on Netflix right now.
Agree.
And so I think that what happens is that people are actually curious to find out something that they haven't really seen before. So even in America, I have seen a little bit of a reception where people are kind of like, oh, let's find out. Like, we know Cardinal, we know Maestro, but we want to know a little bit more about what was happening north of the border, because the story hasn't been told all that much outside of,
Drake.
Yeah, well, Drake. What's before Drake? Because for funny, when I grew up, I always thought Maestro was the first one.
Yeah.
But now people are like, well, Drake's the first one. I'm like, well, no.
Yeah. Actually, it's Tory Lanez. He's the first one.
There you go. And so, but I think there is a curiosity to hear the story outside of Toronto, just because it hasn't been told a whole bunch of times already, right?
And I hope that is the case. I really do, because I'm always about home team. Rob Freeman, the person. Oh, sorry.
I think it's the way that you capture Toronto. That because with Torontonians, they have a short attention span, so you kind of have to catch their attention within the first 30 seconds to a minute. And that trailer that I seen before I watched the documentary caught my eye, made me want to say, yo, dog, I have to watch it. So stuff like that, the way that you guys put things together, I think that's
fair.
I feel like that would help. But when it comes to documentaries, are you thinking about doing any more documentaries anytime soon about like the real deal, like the gritty? Would you do something like that, like except for hip hop, like the real gritty of Toronto? Is that something that you would do?
Would you do a hood documentary?
No, like the real gritty. No.
Just call it what it is. Would you do a documentary for the Mandem?
Not the Mandem, like for the city. Like, you know how Compton has theirs.
You said gritty,
bringing them together.
You mean like
the
a crime,
Bloods and Crips,
like a crime documentary,
troubled area,
like a crime documentary,
like how you, like the real deal.
Sure.
I'm trying to be politically correct.
Me personally, no, but I'll tell you why though. Because again, going through the experience of Drop the Needle in terms of trying to sell it, trying to convince people to see kind of on a mainstream level was challenging, right? And we had Russell Peters, we had Cardinal, we had Scratch Bassett, we had names that would be known outside of Toronto. But there was such a challenge that for me, for the next one, for me personally, spending 2 years on it and knowing how important it is to build an audience, to be able to get it seen at a higher level, like Amazon Primes and things like that. I personally would go for an idea that's a little bit more of a national idea personally for next. So I would like to see someone make that movie. It's not that I don't think that documentary shouldn't be told. It's just me personally, because of what I went through, I'm kind of looking at more of a national story.
Yeah, you want to make it more appealing to more people.
Yeah, just because for me, I feel like that's the evolution for me as a filmmaker.
I like that.
But again, though, those stories, there has been documentaries in the past that I've seen. I can't remember the names of them, like The Real Toronto or something like that.
Yeah.
I can't remember what they are. And
terrible.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, in hindsight now, it's terrible. But at the time, it got a lot of attention.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Russell Peterson, how was that?
Peters,
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my God, he's going to kill me. Or try to get at me. But how was the vibe? Because he's like he's a real like handful. So how was he?
There's 3 people.
Asshole.
No, I said he's a handful.
No, there's 3 people that we weren't there physically for the interview.
Oh, okay.
Michelle Geister, who is the creator of Rap City.
Yeah, we're gonna have her soon. We're working on her.
Oh, good.
We're working on her. We're gonna have her soon.
Oh,
Well, that's fantastic.
so I can sit down and talk to her,
fantastic.
let her know.
That's a very good idea. She was in Jamaica, so I talked to her.
Is she full time in Jamaica?
That bad.
She's actually visiting Toronto, but she's.
It seems like it. It seems like she's full time there.
Yeah, but she does visit Toronto though. We filmed. So we had someone else film her. Russell was another one. He's in LA most of the time. We got him to agree to do it, but we had someone kind of go and film it and gave the questions to them to ask the questions. So we weren't there physically for that interview.
Yeah. Rob Freeman, the hip hop head. We're talking off camera.
Before we go get into that, please show us your Jordan check.
Oh!
Jordan check.
I bought these ones because I like the orange, and I thought I'm going to wear clothing that's going to match it. But then I realized I got nothing that ever matches this shit.
I got Reeboks on, okay?
Where are those?
Reeboks. Those are the Reeboks. Okay, but
My bad. Go ahead.
They're very jealous because I got 4 pairs of shoes and they only got 2 each.
no, he's a liar.
Okay, so Rob Freeman, the hip hop head. We're speaking off camera about hip hop, our love for hip hop. When did you first fall in love with hip hop?
And what was the track?
Being a kid, and you grew up in Kingston, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Kingston. It was like 89, 90, so I'm aging myself a little bit. It was stuff like Digital Underground.
Can you recall what song?
No, well, Humpty Dance was probably.
Humpty Dance
I was a little bit younger, right? So I was a little bit more like the radio friendly stuff was a little bit more appealing to me. So it was like that split where Humpty Dance was a fun song, a little bit radio friendly.
Yeah.
But I loved Humpty Dance. But that was a Black Sheep, but that was a little bit afterwards. Mm-hmm. A little bit later on, it was more like a Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Gangstar, Eric B. and Rakim. Those are the types of stuff that kind of get. I think Digital Underground though was honestly like one of the very, very.
And did you listen to Canadian hip hop like during that period too, or was it just all American?
No, I listened to Canadian. Dream Warriors, Maestro were the two main ones for that time period.
Yeah,
but then you got later on. Like one of my favorite albums of all time is actually a compilation album. It's a Rap Essentials.
Rap Essentials, yeah.
That's one of my favorite albums of all time.
Man, classic.
Right? Rascals, Cash Crop's one of my favorite albums of all time, right? So I definitely listened to a lot of Canadian stuff. Now, for me, I love hip hop. I'm not an expert in any which way, shape, or form. So part of the fun of this process was discovering songs from that era, or maybe just a little bit after, like in the 2000s, where I wasn't listening as much, where I missed it the first time around. There was a song I really wish that was in the movie. It's called Red Life. The artist is Red Life. Who's Talking Weight?
Whoa, classic! Oh my god! Yeah. And they're from Rexdale, I think. Are they from Rexdale or? Okay, nobody knows.
I'm not good with my neighborhoods.
I just want to shout out Rexdale. That's all.
I
think they're from Rexdale. What's that?
No, Red Life.
Red Life.
Oh, I thought you were talking.
So you're not paying attention.
Stop it.
But the funny thing about Red Life was that I wasn't familiar with that song beforehand.
One of my faves.
I think the remix was actually on Rap Essentials, and I liked the remix, but there was a video version that I liked actually even more, and I missed it. Mm-hmm. So when I discovered it kind of later on, I'm like, man, I want to get the song in the movie. And I was just unable to like kind of fit it in to things. But
is there like a soundtrack? Because watching that documentary, the everything from Infinite to Citizen Kane,
it was crazy,
to Frankenstein, to Socrates, I was like falling out of my couch. I was like, holy, you got everybody. Smokes.
Yes, now, thank you for mentioning that. Since you got all these personalities in the documentary, would you divulge it on who is the most difficult to deal with?
Oh boy,
or the hardest to get a hold of?
Well, the hardest to get a hold of was okay, there's a lot that was hard to get a hold of because we didn't have that clout. We were first-time filmmakers. There's a lot of people out there that are first-time filmmakers trying to make things happen, and you kind of when you get to a certain point, and you're getting calls and you're getting text messages, hey, B, you want to do this, you want to do that.
You're like, fuck off.
Yeah, right. So someone like Cardinal was very hard.
Yeah, it takes some convincing.
We had to call in a favor, right?
Yeah,
we needed help for that one. Socrates even. Like when I went to Eugene, I said, Eugene, don't worry about anyone. We're going to take care of getting everyone. You don't need. I was trying to make it easy as possible for Eugene, right? At that point in time to make sure he was on board. And I said, we'll take care of everyone, but we just need help with 3 people. One was Socrates. Because he can get Socrates for us. The second one was Jason Palma. And the third one was his wife. Because for me, when we were doing the movie, I really wanted to have his wife involved because she was there, especially at the beginning of the store in 1990. There's not too many people who could speak on that time period. Him and her being some of the two. So those are the 3 people said, and he was like, my wife? What are you talking about, my wife? Why do you need my wife for? I'm like, oh. I was trying to explain.
It'll make sense
later on. Don't worry about it, right? Yeah. But those were the 3 people that we needed to call in favors. So for me, the hardest ones were just ones that, maybe we're just at a level that we couldn't overcome.
Was there a name that you were searching for?
No.
I feel like there was.
No.
You don't know what to say.
You'll never know. No, we'll never know.
I already know.
I'm going down with the ship.
Oh my God. So, what's next for you?
Well, I can't say with the actual, we don't know for sure what we're going to do, but here's the situation. For this documentary, Drop the Needle, it was probably about 75% hip hop, 25% electronic.
Nice. Now, before you go on, I did see the shift in the middle of the documentary where it went from
kind of a mixture.
Yeah. And then literally it just went right or left into hip hop. It just stopped going. Like you guys were touching into that. and how you're painting the scene of how Toronto was in the late 80s, early 90s, where it was just one big dance, trance, underground, dark place. And again, like in the middle of the documentary, you can actually taste it. Like you guys switching right up. Like right
I would say there's a reason for it though, is because when we get into the label stuff, Steppin' Big, he had a studio and multiple genres recorded in the studio, but the label Steppin' Bigga was hip hop. And what I was trying to figure out was, what's the importance of this label? Well, the reality is there was other studios out there and other labels out there, but there weren't many. There wasn't a lot of support for those labels and whatnot on the hip hop side. So the hip hop was at that time period was having a lot of trouble gaining traction because of the lack of a support system. But here comes Eugene, who's like, hey, here's my studio. Let's do a label. Let's offer the support. Let's offer the help. So that's why when we were talking about the label, I really wanted to kind of show, okay, why is this important? And you had to do that by sort of putting in context where hip hop was and the struggles that artists were having at that time period. So I know what you're saying. There's a little bit, and then we talk about Rap City as well. So there's a little bit of a situation where just the topics geared towards hip hop, and me being a hip hop head, I did want to go in that direction a little bit more. So for the next one, what we're trying to do is flip it.
Okay.
So it's going to be like 80% of the electronic side of things, but also a little bit still like an idea that we have that allows me to still get a little bit of hip hop in there as well.
Yeah,
you know? So like 80-20 of the other ratio.
That should be good.
That'll be great.
Nice.
Toronto is a huge is a hub for house music.
It
Really?
is.
Yeah, it is.
It was huge. Drum and bass is huge here.
Bass, Jungle.
You know, the rave scene in the 90s was off the wall in Canada, even like not just Toronto, but Montreal, Ottawa, Vancouver. They all had a great, the great rave scene going on here. So there's definitely a lot of great stories and people there that we feel that we could tell a really good story with. Got it.
And do you think shooting a documentary this time around is going to be easier than shooting it the first time? Because the first time you kind of have to prove yourself and, perhaps maybe get your production name out there. Now that you're out there and people could actually watch something and have a reference, now it'll be able to, maybe get guests easier and make things happen a bit quicker.
I believe so. Yeah. Knock on wood. Yeah. I believe so, right? But I also think there's going to be a challenge in editing it, because now beforehand, when no one knows who you are, you don't have anything to go up against. People seem to be enjoying Drop the Needle, right?
It's amazing.
So now we have something that we're going up against, right?
The bar set high, absolutely.
Exactly. So now when it comes to editing it, because no matter what, you kind of have to find this. You have to have a good story. The community was a story for Drop the Needle. I didn't discover that until day 9, right? So you have to find that story, and we have an idea. We have a good idea, but we don't have a story yet, and we're not going to discover the story until later on. And then it's like, what? Do we pick the right story? Can we find the good one? And then putting together an entertaining package that doesn't. It's not a carbon copy of Drop the Needle, but maybe like a cousin of Drop the Needle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So I think there's going to be. I think the production part of it might be a little bit easier, but I think the editing part of it is going to be actually harder. Yeah,
got it.
Because when it comes to making a part 2 of something, it's kind of hard. Do you know this? Even with movies, sometimes it's like the part 2s are not always as good as the part.
Even music, like if you come up with a classic album,
it's hard for you.
You have to measure up against the Illmatic or the Reasonable Doubts and the Ready to Dies.
It was written. Was a great album. I love that album.
Amazing.
But it was in the shadow of Illmatic. And everyone at the time period is like, well, it's not Illmatic. And it's not. But it's still a pretty good album, right?
For the longest time, I thought It Was Written was the better album. I've since changed my perspective, but It Was Written is an amazing album. And the song I Gave You Power, probably one of the best storytelling songs of all time.
He's a great storyteller.
Oh,
Nas.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why he said this, because I think what happens is that people when you say you always go with the consensus. Like, is Illmatic my favorite album of all time? It's not. I love that album. Like, it's not.
What is?
Midnight Marauders by Tribe Called Quest.
Nice.
That's my favorite album, right? But if you're gonna do when you do an article and you kind of have to go to that consensus, and I think the consensus is like, yeah, sure, Illmatic is a very good one to represent as the best album of all time. Even though it's not my personal pick, maybe not a lot of other people's personal picks, it's a good one to have at that sort of spot.
And this is the perfect segue, because he said personal picks.
Oh, we go.
Were you going to do it?
I was going to do it. Look at the camera for us.
Okay, go ahead. You can ask him.
Please look at this camera.
Oh, my God.
And would you please give us your Mount Rushmore of Canadian acts or hip-hops.
All right, so for this
Artists.
one, it's gonna be 90s based.
We need four.
All right.
This might get the needle drop canceled.
Oh no!
You better be careful.
See, now you're gonna put mad pressure on him.
Oh wow, Rob's sweating.
I'm gonna do it because I got it's I go for more of the what I think is like the talent wise. Everyone's talented, right? But I love Spade from Citizen Kane, so I put Spade in there. I put Mathematic, Down to Earth.
Okay.
Mathematics on there.
These are Canadian acts, by the way.
That's Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah. I will go with I'll go with those two, kind of more of the underground. I think you have to put Maestro in there because Maestro is he like Canadian hip hop didn't start with him, but he was the one that kind of broke through. He's also he made like he was the first one that made amazing Canadian songs. Like there was people beforehand. People were trying, but they didn't have the resources to make quality material. Yeah. He got I'm not sure how his backstory, but he got the quality, the ability to make quality material. So all of a sudden now, like we're hearing great songs from him. So I'll put Maestro on there. I'll put Spade, Mathematic, and who's going to be the fourth?
Drum roll.
I'm trying to think of who's in the movie.
Mess it up.
Oh man, I don't want to be boring and say Cardinal, but I'll say Cardinal.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Cardinal is like the what Illmatic is to hip hop albums. Cardinal is to do I like other MCs? Like, is there a little bit of a difference in terms of my ranking for it? Yes, but at the same point in time, Cardinal is an amazing talent and spokesperson for that generation. Because not only does he have talent, not only does he have a catalog of great songs, but he has charisma. He's just a complete package to be a fantastic kind of spokesperson for that era of Canadian hip hop. So for me, it's like that Maestro, Cardinal. Then we go like with Spade and Mathematic as the four.
Well said.
Yes.
Well said.
That's amazing.
I like how he broke it down. Like he gave you reasons as to why they're on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this
I'm
is why
gonna leave here. I'm like, oh, I should have said this person. That's how it works, right? You always think with them afterwards.
Absolutely.
Facts.
Absolutely. When it comes to young filmmakers, do you have like a production house, and are you maybe it's too early in your career, but are you looking for new talent in any sort of field? Maybe be editing or director, or looking at scripts from younger filmmakers, personalities. Like, is that something you and your partner thought about, or that it's just not a thought yet because maybe it's too early?
I think it's a little too early.
Yeah.
I think for us, it's a standpoint where we kind of have this one movie. It's been received well. But sometimes it's like what you do as the follow-up is just as important. You look at filmmakers like Quentin Tarantino. His first movie was a movie called Reservoir Dogs. Yes. Good movie. I love it a lot. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
But it was the second movie, Pulp Fiction, that exploded, right? There's another director, Paul Thomas Anderson. He made Boogie Nights. He had a movie before that called The Hard Eight. And I didn't, I was a little bit more like this to the movie. But then his second movie was Boogie Nights, and I love Boogie Nights. So it always seems like your second one is in film.
The breakthrough
is the breakthrough one, and I think what we need to do is we need to do this next one, see what happens with this, and then it's going to be a little bit of a different landscape in how we operate and how we deal with different projects and stuff like that. The only thing I will say is, please, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, but if someone could please make a Rap City documentary, I really want to see that, because we have a little Rap City segment in the Rap City's impact on Canadian music cannot be understated. And Michelle Geister, that's why we talk about Michelle Geister and having her on. That's a fantastic idea, because that story and that show is just as important as Play to Record, is just as important as Ron Nelson, and Ron Nelson's like so important. So someone needs to make that documentary happen. It won't be me, because I want to try to do different things. But I really hope someone does that. So if I'm able to help make that happen, I will, but I just don't. I think I got to make another one before I always
said I wanted Rap City to come back.
And that is a name when we're talking off camera about who we want on the podcast. Sorry to cut you off. Ron Nelson.
Ron Nelson's
Oh, yeah.
fantastic.
That's
he's
who we
a
need.
great.
And we're also working on him. I'm courting him.
Yeah?
Yeah, we're courting him.
He was someone who gave us so much great gold, and it hurt so bad. Because the funny thing about Ron Nelson, what I had in the movie initially, at one point in time, I had to take it out because it didn't have the right focus. Like focus was the hardest thing about editing, keeping the focus of the story and what you put into it.
Yeah.
I had Ron talking about how when he was a DJ in the 80s, before Maestro Fresh West, he would get tapes of artists, and he was like, listen to them. He said, these aren't that good. These are kind of bad quality wise, but he would still play them because people were trying and people didn't have the resources. Who has a studio in 1987, 1988? Who has the money for a studio?
Nobody,
Right. So it was like hisses and pops, and it didn't sound all that good, but he was still playing it because he wanted to give them a chance because he understood the situation, right?
Yeah.
So Ron's a guy who has such great insight to kind of like the roots of Canadian hip hop, and I love to he gave us so much great stuff that I wish we could have had. He's a other guy. Like make a documentary about Ron Nelson. Like that's a legitimate idea that should be done.
Is there a different avenue you could take instead of maybe going to a big network or whatever, but maybe make something that is strictly for, say, social media, maybe like a mini doc? Would that be something that you would be open to doing?
I can never say never, but there's so much time. Like I do want to make the bigger ones,
Got it.
Right? And the amount of time, I don't want to get burnt out. I got burnt out so much making Drop the Needle, right? And that's a big concern.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like I got to pace what I do. Yeah. So if I know that I'm going to be editing this sucker and it's going to be like a real pressure situation for over a year, it'll take me over a year.
It makes sense. It absolutely makes sense.
I don't want to burn myself beforehand. But that being said, there's always that idea like, okay, well, I'm not physically doing anything right now editing wise. It'd be kind of nice to do a little bit more, do kind of little stuff. But again, I like theaters. I like big screens. I kind of like the idea of seeing these stories told in that kind of scale. So Ron Nelson, Rap City, Mastermind, like all these great stories out there.
Filmmakers, this is the content we need. We need a lot of this content because people just don't know. I didn't even know.
I hope this is the kind of the opening of the door, right?
Yeah.
Let this door open and let's hear more of these stories. There's an audience for it.
Yeah.
So let's hear more of these stories and these contributions from people that are not getting the recognition on a national scale that I think they should be getting.
Yes.
I didn't know who Ron Nelson was before I started doing this movie.
Oh, really?
I grew up in Kingston, right? I wouldn't know.
That's true. Makes sense.
I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
Right?
He's a legend.
He's
Absolute
a legend, right?
Yeah.
But that's why these stories are important to tell on a national scale, so that people kind of
And another story, big man, small clothes. We got to work on that documentary.
No, we do not.
It's cute. It's cute.
We're going to make it happen.
Because if you zoom down to his calves, this guy's about to have.
Hey, don't look at my thigh. Don't look at my thigh gap, okay?
Jesus Christ,
I don't understand.
Hey, I just wanted to make Rob laugh, and he's laughing. He doesn't want to like break out laughing, but I can tell he wants to.
I'm trying to think of how to make this work here.
That's hilarious. He's gonna be back because we have a semi-viral clip about him and his fake Jordans.
We like to go back and forth, and the banter and all of that. And
So
how much time do we have?
We have about 12 minutes left.
Oh, perfect.
Did CBC hit you up and like, hey, we want to do like a one night, like how they have like the movies on the channel on whatever CBC channel is on Sunday night.
I see what you're saying, like a feature.
Special, a special. Like, has any of those like Canadian institutions hit you up yet?
No, because we have an I don't know. Again,
exclusive. Yes,
it would be a distributor who would be handling those conversations. Okay. So our distributors Level Films, and so I don't know who they would have talked to, but at the same point in time, I know that Amazon has an exclusive deal with us that started a while back.
Understood.
So once the exclusivity runs out, that's when I could be able to put out a Blu-ray release, and that's part of the plans is putting some special features and getting some of the stuff I couldn't use into a Blu-ray because why have it sit on my computer, right?
Is there a soundtrack?
We're working on that as well.
That'd be great if you put it on vinyl.
Yeah, we're trying to put it on vinyl.
Sick.
I was talking to someone about doing it. I gave him the songs that I'm hoping to get on there.
That's so sick.
I'm trying to make it a mixture of songs that like Socrates, Hate Runs Deep. Everyone knows that song, but I really want that song on there. But I'm also trying to get some of the like Citizen Kane, Monopoly Money is known really well. But there's another song called I and I that I like a lot as well. It's in the movie that might be not as
I see what you're saying.
known. So I'm trying to get that.
Go with the B-sides a bit. You know what I mean? Because people are familiar, like that follow know about the Monopoly.
Exactly. So we'll see what happens. But that's something we are currently working on because. Everyone deals with the physical copy of the records and that kind of, selling a record physically. I collect personally. I don't know you guys, but I
collect vinyls too.
I collect movies too, right? So I kind of appreciate that. I know it's not a thing to do as much anymore, but I still appreciate that. I think a lot of our audience does as well. So it kind of makes sense to kind of pursue a little bit of a physical release for these couple of things.
For sure.
Is there a dream project for you? Like if you could make any type of film with any actor, any guest, what does that dream project look like?
Okay, right now it would be, so here's a quick little story. Before Drop the Needle happened, really started this off, after Bang the Party, the Toronto Raptors, the Toronto Raptors won the championship.
Right.
Now I talk about collecting Blu-rays and stuff like that. Back in the day, I would go to HMV and I go through the sports section. I would see the championship recap DVDs, like the Miami Heat one and the Lakers one, right? And I always thought to myself, man, if the Raptors ever win, I want to buy this and have it in my collection. So when the Raptors were getting close, like looking good, they didn't win it yet, but they were looking good. I thought to myself, I'm going to make my own version. I'll put a 45-minute thing together, use my music, download all the clips from YouTube, all the game footage, put it together, burn it on disc, put it in my collection. The rough cut was 3.5 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had to condense that down to 220.
Oh man!
But then I put it onto YouTube because after all that work, I want to share it. So I put it on YouTube, and it took a couple months, right? A little bit of a trickle. Some people were watching, some positive feedback, but then the COVID happened. Everyone sat home, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, YouTube's like, okay, your video is going to be getting the jump in the analytics, and it went from 20,000 views to 200,000 views. But more importantly, the response and the comments from people watching it were like, wow, this is actually a real movie. It's not like a...
I gotta check that out.
Unfortunately, there was 3 years later, YouTube decided to hit a copyright strike on some of the songs.
Oh, yeah.
They started to do
that. Well, they were doing it at the time period, but for some reason, even 3 years later, someone could put that copyright thing down, and even 3 years after the fact, take it down. The response, though, was strong enough that led the way to feeling the confidence needed to be able to do Drop the Needle. You're talking about a dream project. I would love to be able to do a real full version of Northern Uprising, because the championship season of the Raptors, you gotta be a basketball fan, mind you. Like I think it is a little bit.
Yeah, 2019 was really weird. It was really weird because like Kawhi Leonard was like reports of him not wanting to be here.
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Yeah, that's part of the story. Part of the, it's an evolution. It's a story of the entire season, but it's told in as a story. And I would love to make a real version of that. But there's 2 problems. One, it is a little more of a selective audience, right? It is very basketball heavy. You kind of gotta like basketball to enjoy it. Number 2, you thought I used a lot of songs in Drop the Needle. I used double that in the Northern Uprising because I didn't have to worry about copyrights until 3 years later. So I was using anything I wanted, like Mobb Deep. I was using I was using Michael Jackson even.
I used the whole Thriller album.
It was the Shook ones. It was
Hell on Earth.
It was Hell on Earth. It was Hell on Earth. Yeah.
Oh, Hell on Earth. Oh wow.
I was using even like Boys to Men. Yeah, man. Sipping ain't easy, like that song, man. I was using that. I was using like all this great music and
classics.
And the funny thing was, it was all hip hop or R&B, except I put Tragically Hip as the song during the parade, and it works too. Like
what song?
It worked. It's A Good Life If You Know, or something like that. It's a slower one, but it really fit. The end of the movie and the parade.
R.I.P. Gordy.
Yeah. So anyhow, Northern Uprising would be the one, but it would be extremely difficult to do. But I really would love to make a real version of that. I just don't foresee that happening. Just because the logistics of making that happen is going to be really
TSN or whatever, MLS.
Hit
them up.
Those are the ones
or MLS, whatever they're called. They are the worst. I think we'll talk about that later. Anyway,
say it now.
The guys who own Raptors and the Leafs, they're the worst. TFS. TFS. Okay. They're the worst people on earth. They don't know how to manage a team.
Really?
They only care about money. They don't care about actually winning.
Ooh, well,
that's a fact. I'm not even gonna lie.
I don't know what to
not
say
even for the
that.
Leafs. They don't care about winning. Their seats are always filled. That's a different conversation.
But basketball though, I think, like Masai Ujiri he has complete control, as we've seen, and we could debate on the choices he's made, because he's made some choices that are maybe a little bit. I like Masai Ujiri.
Weird choices,
but there's been some choices in the recent past have been a little bit tough. But for me, he seems to be in complete control of that. Because why? Because they did the marketing. The We of the North marketing was such a hit and such a home run.
It was great.
That was bringing money in. They win a championship. So what they're saying is, I think, is that they're saying, hey, Messiah, you obviously know what you're doing. We're paying you a lot of big bucks. We want to keep you here. We're not going to get in your way, right? Yeah. Now, the other parts of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, like the Leafs or whatever, I can't speak on that stuff, right? But I know historically speaking, they did care about just the
Are you a Sens fan?
Sens?
Yeah.
I don't like hockey.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, guys.
Wow.
Yay.
Sorry, guys. I'm not a big hockey guy.
You like basketball better than hockey or football? Which one?
Just basketball.
Just basketball?
Yeah. Just
What's
basketball.
your team?
The Raptors. Before the Raptors.
Like in real life? Like in real life, Raptors is your team?
Yeah.
Before the Raptors?
That's
Before the
what
Raptors came here in the
he's
90s?
Oh, come on now. There's always
No,
gonna be ups and
which one
downs.
do you, Damon Stoudemire days, Tracy McGrady days, Vince Carter days, which Raptors?
Well,
Because, there's different generations of Raptors.
so that's a good. Actually, I like that question. Then the Chicago Bulls during the '90s. So even though I like the
Michael.
Raptors, I was more Chicago Bulls, right? The team that I liked the most wasn't the best team, but it was the Chris Bosh, Jose Calderon, Anthony Parker, Jorge Garbajosa.
Okay.
That 2006, 2007, because that was the first year I got season tickets.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was going to a lot of the games, and they were playing well.
They were playing really well.
They fanned out quickly, but it was still a really fun vibe at that point in time. So I know historically speaking, when people look at the Raptors, it's like that's just a little small blip on the radar, because like the Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan years.
Yeah, that's what people talk about.
Yeah, but for me personally, just because of where I was at that point in time and my connection in terms of going to games and whatnot, it was at 2006, 2007 era.
Yeah.
So I have you on Facebook, and I was reading a lot of the comments. Like people were like, "Hey, when is it dropping on everywhere else on Earth other than Canada?"
Yeah.
When is it dropping all across the world on Amazon?
Well, it might not be Amazon, right? We don't know that for sure. Well, all I could say is that right now it's looking like it's September. That we would have it available in some fashion elsewhere or earlier.
Okay.
So there could be chances that things change. The key right now is the fact that, people watching it on Amazon, numbers matter, right? And the more people that are watching it, it makes it a little bit easier for us to expand beyond Canada. Because that's the key is getting the story outside of the country, right? And expose.
So help me understand this, because I'm not privy to how it works. So is it on Amazon
Prime
only in Canada?
Yeah, your IP address is like associated. If your IP address is associated with a Canadian IP address,
That's
Amazon
it.
will only pull up.
Like if you go to the States and you put on Amazon in the States,
You won't find it.
You won't find it. 'cause will
and
go
you'll
to
find, but
American.
what you will find is different movies and different TV shows that you won't find
Over here.
also on Amazon
Yeah.
Canada.
Yeah.
Right? Because what they do licenses, they'll still sometimes do worldwide licenses, but usually it's territorial.
Yep.
So they'll say, okay,
Got
we'll pay
it.
just for this country, this country, this country, or they want a bigger stuff. They'll do the worldwide, right?
Okay.
But that's why if you ever go to different countries on Netflix and on Amazon, you will get different material.
Got it.
So before we go, is it money or love for you?
Oh, it's love.
It's a love, right?
Oh, if it's not money for sure. It's not money at all. It's absolutely love. I like money. Yeah. I want to make money.
What is it for you?
Clearly.
it's-
And your wife will see this.
It's all about the love.
It's all about the love.
It's all about the love.
The love of money.
Yeah.
Come on, let's hear it.
The love of money.
When it comes to what, though? What are we
Hilarious.
talking about? It could be different.
I mean,
If we're talking about careers,
girl, don't try
No,
to make
seriously,
it.
that's
We don't want
different.
context. Just answer.
it's different. Love.
It's
Really?
for me.
'Cause
The love
you-
is getting is knowing you're getting an emotional reaction. But the thing is, though, is to get those emotional reactions, you need money to do it. I got kids.
That's a
I got
fact.
bills. You got to pay for these movies, right? So that's where it's got to be money,
Yeah.
right? But what's the best feeling? The best feeling is knowing that when someone goes to the end of the movie and says they have tears, I'm like, yes.
Yeah, that's
You
the
know what
best.
I mean? And
the
I'm
emotions,
saying
yeah.
that because that's what I was shooting for. That's what I wanted.
That's the best.
People emotionally attached to the story that they feel whether it be laughing, crying, fear, whatever your emotion that you're chasing after, knowing that you got that is the best feeling. So it's love, but money has got to play a part.
Yeah, but it's you have to love what you do, right? In order for you to make money.
So your answer is
love. I put love first because if you don't put the love into it, it's like food. If you don't put the love into the food, it's gonna taste like crap. Right? So at the end of the day, like you can't make money if your food tastes like crap. So you have to put the love in it. You can't make money off of your film if you don't put your heart into it, right? So
that's well said.
Brought to you by Brooklyn.
Thank you.
Got to you.
Hey, this is Black Mob. We got Brooklyn.
Yes.
We got Glory. We got Rob Freeman.
West Side.
Drop the Needles on Amazon. You need to go watch it.
Yeah, check it out.
Sit down.
Don't be cheap and
smoke a
download
spliff.
Amazon Prime. You have to let them know to be.
Yeah, you have to go to Amazon. You have to go to Amazon.
You have to get an Amazon account.
Yeah, have an Amazon account.
Do you want to plug the movie?
Look at that. Yeah, that's your camera.
Drop the Needle on Amazon Prime. If you don't watch it on Amazon Prime, then at the very least, just if you like it, tell your friends and family about it. At least help me in that way if you don't watch it on Amazon Prime. But it's on Amazon Prime, and learn a little bit about the history of not just hip hop, not just a little bit of the electronic world, but learn about this great guy named Eugene Tam and why he's a legend. This someone who works at a store, you wouldn't think he's a legend. Well, he is, and hopefully the movie will show you exactly why that is.
All right, we out. Later.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.